September 16, 2024 at 7 o'clock p.m. We are at the Dayton Rehoboth High School, 2700 Regional Road in North Dayton, Mass. This meeting is being recorded. The listing of matters are those reasonably anticipated by the chair, which may be discussed at the meeting. Not all items listed may in fact be discussed, and other items not listed may also be brought up for discussion to the extent permitted by law. Will you please have a roll call, please?
Nicole Mello, present. Mark Pacheco, present.
And Peter Karen, present. And can everyone please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? Jim, the interim town administrator is going to lead the dialogue this evening, and hopefully you walk away with some answers, and your concerns are hopefully addressed as well. But with that said, Jim, whenever you're ready.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If I need
Smoke
a
medium.
mic,
Do you want
someone
to check?
someone will tell me that. Thankfully, I think we're
Maybe crank it a little bit more.
so that we can hear.
We-
I look forward to the dialogue.
Good.
I see a lot of familiar faces here, folks that I've interacted with since my service to the town began in mid-June. But many of you don't know who I am, and since this is being recorded, there may be folks, although not loud, but there may be folks who are looking at me for the first time. I hate talking about myself, but it's necessary for this introduction. My name is James Purcell. I was a career, well still am, I suppose, a career town manager. I began service 49 years ago. I'm retired 12 years ago. I was the manager of the town of Norton. And since my retirement, I've done what I call one of these gigs a year. So I've done a dozen of these things. Sometimes it's like doing a parachute jump into combat. A little better than half the time, it's a normal transition. The prior manager or administrator has moved on to another community or retired, and things are nice and quiet. You guys have managed to be a hybrid here at the town of California. You've got a good core, a group working for you, which makes the job a lot easier. Before you take that job, you have some reconnaissance information. I certainly had some before I decided to throw my hat in the ring. But when you hit the ground, I sure can.
Wow.
When you hit the ground, conditions, conditions are often different than what you had thought they would be. But on the matter of, the subject matter tonight is the operating budget of the town of Dayton. And so in those 49 years, I've put more than my share of these budgets together. I know the process. I know all the elements of a municipal budget in Massachusetts. What I don't know, and it's the reason I just told you about myself, what I don't know is are the budget deliberations that you went through in the spring that led up to the adoption of the fiscal 25 budget, and some of the discussions that took place about primarily the BP debt. Okay, so I'm going to walk you through the paper version of some slides that was shown at a select board meeting on August 21st. The presentation was made by the town's financial advisors. Their full name is, well, it's Unibank. Okay, the Unibank Financial Advisory Services, Inc. A person named Lynn Foster Myers made the presentation, and that was largely a replay of a presentation that was made in February of 2022, about 2 weeks in advance of the March 5th district-wide vote on the BP expansion question altogether. So as I say, we will walk through some of those slides. Now, I am in an unusual position here right now of being both a presenter and I'm going to be the facilitator of this meeting. So I've got just a couple of loose ground rules, if you may. I very much want us all to be interactive here. But if there's something that you can say in 3 minutes, please don't take 10, okay? Because other parties may wish to speak. Let's try not to be repetitive unless you want to go on the record with something that was already said, then so be it. And I'll be as fair as possible with the dialogue, and knowing as many people here as I think I do, I know everything will be civil. This is a difficult question, you know, the funding question of the BP project. I got to take my glasses off. There, that's much better. Our purpose in being here tonight is how to fund the debts associated with construction activities that are ongoing at BP Vocational School and those that were already completed at the Bristol County Aggie School. You know that on November 5th, in the presidential election, those two debt exclusion questions are on the ballot. And I think we're 50 days or so away from that. Geez, I should know that number exactly. I have a whiteboard in my office and I change the dates every day. I should know the exact number. But we think that this is about the time when people start to tune in on what's coming up on the election ballot. To start this discussion any sooner, you know, we'd have lost people. You know, they'd have attended a meeting and probably forgotten all about it until a day or two before the presidential election. And I'm sure they've got the presidential election and all the down ballot things in mind, first and foremost. We also timed this presentation in a way that would would accommodate at least one other if there was a desire for that, for people, and to still keep the conversation current and relevant. So if you'll cooperate with those ground rules, I think we're going to have a good discussion. I do need to ask this question: is everyone here clear on that Dayton must pay for their allocable share of project debts for both schools? Is there anyone in doubt? Is there anyone who thinks that if you vote no on either or both of these questions that you're not going to have to pay? Okay, that's good. Thank you. That makes things a little bit easier. So I'd like to turn your attention to this document. And we'll walk you through most of the slides. When we presented this document on the 21st of August, we really got down and dirty in the weeds with some fine financial issues. And I was told to make it a bit simpler for this presentation tonight. The slides in question remain in the package, and we're open to questions on that at the conclusion of the presentation. And our very able town accountant is here if there are things that I can't answer. Remember, I said I wasn't here for your budget deliberations, and she has quite the command of the subject matter. So, is why I didn't want to use the mic. Excuse me? Okay. Okay, we'll rehash some facts that most of you already know. On the first page in, as we said earlier, on March 5th, 2022, district-wide, that is the membership of the vocational district, voted yes by about a 2-to-1 margin for the $305 million school building project. In Dayton, you can turn those percentages upside down. The Dayton voters voted 2-to-1 against, but being part of the membership there and them achieving more than a simple majority of the votes is one of the reasons why you're on the hook for the project expenses. If you go to the next page, where it says Bristol Plymouth project, and of the proposed $305 million, the Massachusetts School Building Authority, the MSBA, is committed a little more than $125 million to the project, making the membership, the member communities responsible for the remaining $180 million in debt. Dayton's estimated share, based on its current enrollment, and here's one of the variables here, in the present and over time, is your enrollment. So over a 30-year period of time, Dayton would be obligated to pay somewhere between $25 and $27 million based on today's calculation. I can talk about two variables right away. Okay, one is interest rates on the bonds themselves. Okay, now we're currently in a mode where we're paying interest expenses on construction notes. Okay, they're called bond anticipation notes. So that's why this year's obligation for the town in fiscal 25 is about $127,000, I think. Serena, is that the? I'm sorry, $217,000. I'm sorry, I had those numbers reversed. Those numbers are going to climb, and they're going to climb fast. Okay, because bond anticipation notes are good for 2 years. 217, I believe, is the number, sir. 294. Okay. In any case, somewhere between $200,000 and $300,000 for your obligations. The bond anticipation notes have a limited shelf life and get converted into bonds. So come next fiscal year, you're going to be paying that principal and interest on a permanent bond, plus an additional interest payment on the second bond anticipation note. So your costs will run from, well, in about an 18-month period of time, your costs are going to run from the present, somewhere less than $300,000, to a projected maximum of $911,000. Okay, and that's a pretty significant jump. In looking at the town's history of new real estate tax growth, your Prop 2.5 increment, and another source of income is what you call local receipts. The largest one being motor vehicle excise taxes. Those don't grow historically. Those don't grow fast enough for you to, to make up that difference between the two. So that's why I understand some things were talked about, alternative funding sources, operational cuts, of course, are something that's on the table as well, and in the debt exclusion question. So there's more than one way to attack this problem, but tonight, topically, we're going to focus on the debt exclusion questions. Would anyone like an explanation about the difference between an operational override and a debt exclusion? I'm happy to do that. It would only take a minute. Yes. Okay. So an operational override, which is not on the ballot, is a vote to raise the property tax levy on a permanent basis. Okay, absent an associated underride vote, it adds to your property tax levy base for forever. A debt exclusion is something that's on the books. You're obligated to pay until the debt is repaid, and then your tax levy or the total taxes that are raised in the town, revert back to the normal tax levy level. So that's the difference between an operational override and a debt exclusion. Okay, and in both cases, we're talking about debt exclusions here. Okay. If you don't mind going forward a couple of pages, there's a slide called Bristol Plymouth Member Communities, Debt Exclusions as of August 1st, 2024. It's just a score sheet on the member towns and what actions they have or haven't taken to date. And in the interest of full disclosure, I will tell you that the slides that we presented on the 21st of August had one mistake on this page. We had listed Rehoboth as a yes vote on a debt exclusion. That did not happen. In fact, they voted it down on more than one occasion. Okay? So the score sheet is that Berkeley voted against the project in 2022, but voted for the debt exclusion. Bridgewater has voted for the debt exclusion. Freetown has voted for the debt exclusion. Middleborough and Taunton have the levy capacity to handle it without any special request of the townspeople. Raynham and Rehoboth, as I just said earlier, have voted no on the question. So that's where the member communities stand right now with the BP project. Yes?
So, so what impact does the vote no or another no or no? How does that impact Dayton's share?
It does not affect our share. They've got to. They're lawfully obligated to pay. They've got to find a way to pay, just like us. Boy, if it were that easy, if it were that easy, I wouldn't be standing here tonight. That'd be great. So that's that's how things are currently. Okay. Yeah. I'm sorry. I thought I talked about. Okay, did I talk about the interest rate? I'll talk about both again, okay, if I... Okay. That is a variable. Now, when you lock into your bond, to your permanent bonds, the interest rate is what the interest rate is going to be. In fact, this week, I think the Fed is going to make a significant move on that. It's my belief, I'm not promising anything, I'm not Jerome Powell, but I think there's going to be a significant cut interest rates, and I think that's going to be part of a trend going down. So by the time, I don't know how they've timed the conversion of the bond anticipation note into the first permanent bond, but if they can time the market appropriately, you can get a significantly better interest rate on it. And think about the compounding effect of that over 30 years on the note. So that's one of the variables, but that ends when the series of permanent bonds have been completed. The other factor is of the total nut, so to speak, that you have to pay. Just like you do today, for capital portions of it, for your regular student, operating assessments and the debt portion of that, it depends on what your share, what your student enrollment is. And so that variable will continue from year to year. It'll either go up or go down as a percentage of the total enrollment. Yes?
Do we know what percentage was used for these projections?
I do not. Typically, they go high. Typically, and it's one of the reasons they're saying that this is the worst case scenario here. They take into consideration the increase in material costs and other things. I was talking to one party today. I've talked to quite a few people, several from this audience, in the days leading up to this. One good thing that happened to us, and construction professionals would appreciate this, is despite your due diligence out there in the construction field, you might do soil borings, you might do this, but the biggest question mark in construction projects, in my experience, is the excavation portion of the job. You always find a nugget out there or something that's going to have to be excavated at extra cost, and that's one thing. But the other thing is backing up all the contractors waiting to get started. That thing cascades down through all the trades. Okay, that did not happen here. Okay, you had a clean dig, and nothing has changed with the, to my knowledge. Right through the topping off ceremony that they had. Shortly after I started working for you, I saw that there was a topping off ceremony, and that means they're running. So, so typically these things are inflated, they're looking through the crystal ball, during the projected construction period, and saying, what do we think the costs are going to be. I was in a similar circumstance in Avon a couple of years ago, where they were building a police station, and we were very fortunate that we were locked in with all our sub-trades and things like that with fixed prices, because construction costs were going up 3/4 of a percentage point per month. And so we escaped that. I'm not going to pretend to know what the dynamic is with the DP thing on those costs, but we've been told on more than one occasion that this 9/11 out there is what they believe to be the maximum, and we shall see. You can keep your fingers crossed and hope it comes up less, but I don't know. I'm not gonna buy that one myself. Yes, Peter.
As our percentage of students changes,
Yes.
is the dollar question for a fixed student amount?
No.
That changes.
No, as a matter of law, it's not. You don't fix into amount. It's a total project. It's a total project cost. But for the district to actually ask for more money, it is not gonna. I don't know how that could happen, unless there was some kind of a catastrophe. But everything that I've been told on this, the 9/10 or the 9/11 is the worst case, and quite frankly, for planning purposes, expected. I'm not going to suggest to you that, if everything goes right, it's going to be 800,000 even. Not going to happen. So the next 2 pages, again, that could be open for a discussion under a straight Q&A portion of this meeting. But if you go to the projected budgetary impact of school debt assumes no enrollment change, just go right down to the bottom right. Okay. Remember I said, you have history tells us that your tax revenues and local receipts grow at only a certain rate. So that's calculated in, and we find the bottom line is that to get to that $910,000, you'll likely have to find new revenue sources of $500,000 or cuts in that amount, or some combination of both to meet that. And we're not here to talk, to recommend anything. We're still giving you the problem statement here and asking for some understanding of the math. Yes, sir.
Typically, when we run budgets, we have, there's a cushion when we put in the budget every single year based off $2,000 spent.
Yeah, sure.
That 526 assumes zero cushion, correct?
Yes, and as a matter of fact, in this exercise, it assumes no increase in your fixed and shared expenses, like health insurance and pensions and things like that. So
Really,
Hmm?
the amount that we should be concerned about is lower.
Yeah. In the 1990s, I actually had a year-over-year level funded, in a town I was working in, level funded health insurance at cost. We were running around trying to take credit for a market phenomenon we had nothing to do with. But yeah, so that assumes, it does assume level funded fixed costs. So the tax and budgetary impact. Here's where people on both sides of the question that I've spoken to date have told me to emphasize in this presentation. So and it lists both the BP and the Aggies budgetary impact. In fiscal 2024, we're not through with our fiscal 25 calculations yet, so the freshest information we have available is that the average single-family assessed home in Dayton is valued at $455,204. So, if you go back to the top of the page and look at particularly the 2 right-hand columns, you'll see what the estimated annual and the estimated quarterly impact will be on the average property tax bill in town. And so the BP debt, as it's currently projected, would be on an annualized basis $254.91, and the Aggie debt would be $45.52. The sum of those 2 figures come to $300 and something cents, less than $301 per year. But that is the current projection. There won't be a wide variation in this, okay? There might be a few dollars swing here or there, based on those variables that we talked about earlier. But that's what you're looking at here. And if you turn the page at least for a moment, the related considerations are these. Now, look, the underwriters out there look at your collateral. okay, what your tax capacity is to be able to meet the obligations that they're out there marketing for you and trying to get the best rate. In that process, there's often a rating of the community again. I've sat through many of those sessions, and they want to know what's next, what else is out there. With your future capital needs, you've been, the library is still out there, but you've been doing a remarkable job of cobbling together resources and things like that to get that library project done. But we're still a year away from completion on that. I will tell you the library building committee is very attentive. You've got good professional assistants going there, and I'll say he's not here. Librarian just is floored me with his command of all the architectural details and all the money. He's right on top of this thing. So I'm optimistic that you're going to get a good product there. I don't know if you're going to need any resources for it, but the project is getting there. The fire station, we just recently executed a contract with a consulting firm to do a so-called fire feasibility study. That thing will be underway shortly. You've got some issues in your, I think with the functionality of your fire facilities right now. But what you don't have is a problem with the functionality of your firefighting fields. They're pretty, they're pretty good for a small town group. So you should be pleased about that. The Main Street reconstruction project, we're about to enter into the second major phase. You all know what is it, about 1.7 miles of water line that got replaced there. We've got storm sewers to do next. Like so many of the library construction components, we're going to do as much, if not all, of that second phase in-house with that personnel from the DPW. It could start the storm sewer work with what's left of this construction season. We had a little bit of a setback. We bid out all the materials for pipe and culverts and name it, and we only had one bidder, and not all the projects were bid, so we're out to rebid on that again. And this is New England, and notwithstanding the mild winters that we've had in recent years, Tom could be out there, digging the first 200 yards, and then boom, we've got to stop for the season. But you're entering phase 2 with resources, largely ARPA resources, that's going to get you through there. Unaccounted for on a financial basis right now are the sidewalk construction and the completion of the paving. I haven't gotten into the nitty-gritty with Tom and the Granite City Group, which is our project consultant, but I've been asked on more than one occasion to run a debt service schedule of $3 million. Most recently, we ran one at the board's request. We ran one for $3 million at 5, 10, 15, 20, 25 years, just to get a peek at what that is. So while we're looking to get started on phase 2, we're also actively working on stage 3, because there are some property owners that we have to deal with, to get either temporary construction easements or permanent drainage easements and things like that. But that work is ongoing. At least we're ahead of the curve on that. In the middle school, I know little about, but know that you've got an MSBA letter of intent in the hopper right now. So those, those are things that would be, would necessitate borrowing and should on at least a couple of these things. If you want to present yourself to the bond market in the best possible way, and having limited capacity to meet your BP obligations, makes your standing in the lending community a little precarious. Lenny?
I would like to correct something I saw in this document, and I just mentioned it's not the Dayton Middle School, it's the one that Dayton Elementary School.
Thank you for that.
Feasibility.
Thank you. I told you I was a stranger. I know some stuff, but I don't know Dayton real well. Okay, but thank you for the correction. Yes, thank you. Oh, that's right. That's more important than I guessed in the first place. Yeah, thanks for that, Lenny. Yes, sir.
So while you're on the topic of spending the project we have, what are the townspeople going to be asked to spend for the feasibility study for that elementary project in November?
I understand there's something in the hopper, and I'm going to go out on a limb on this one, okay? And I welcome any corrections that people may have. Do y'all know what a regional school's E&D, so-called excess and deficiency account is? Okay, it's a regional school's version of free cash, okay? So free cash to us is, you close out the books at the end of the year, and what do you have left? Okay, in its simplest form. Regional schools have that version. Different from us, there's a statutory 5% cap. So if they've got on that, so if they've got a $10 million budget, well, 5% of that budget they can carry forward, from one year to the next in this so-called E&D account. Okay. And now I'm getting this second and third hand, so, again, I can be corrected. It's my understanding that due in part to an influx of federal bucks that were available and being spent, that there was at least 1 year where the surplus, where there was more than 5% of your E&D number. And it's my understanding and belief that they they return that money to the town of Dayton, and the Dayton voters parked that money in the capital stabilization account to the tune of about, I think, somewhere around $1.5 million. I do know that the balance of the account is about 1.6 something, but I think the bulk of the balance in our capital stabilization account came from there, and then part of the deal was that they were anticipating a feasibility study coming up, and it would be used, for that purpose. So someone tell me I'm right or wrong or whatever.
Oh, so a follow-up on that.
Yeah.
The rest of the town did get that money back. The town chooses to spend. My question was, do we know what that cost is going to, what that feasibility cost is going to run?
What I do know, I met with the superintendent and the business manager last week. Yeah, last week, and I can't put a pin in it per se, but they did say that they had discussions with MSBA, the Mass School Building Authority, on typical, what do feasibilities cost for buildings this size, with populations this size? How has that been trending? And that's somewhere between, I think, what we've got and maybe $2 million. Okay? Lenny, you're going to correct me. Go ahead.
You mentioned that.
Oh, good. Good.
And the numbers we're looking at are between $775,000 and $1.3 million. However, there's one very
That's
important
good.
caveat.
Yeah.
There's two people here are very much going to be a part of the discussion about where are we at superintendent, the business manager, will be meeting the chairman of the board of selectmen and the chairman of FinCom to talk about what is feasible and what is prudent. Both gentlemen, I believe, have also served on the FinCom before, so they have a good understanding of the history, but also the big question is, you know, if we did spend 1.5, and you ended up with 100,000, is that good business practice? And that's a question that I think Mr. Karen and Mr. Doge need to have with the school people.
Okay, I'm going to take a couple more questions. There's more to the presentation, and I'm very pleased with the back and forth, you know, how this is going. But I do have some more material, and we'll have a lot more time for a Q&A after that. Go ahead,
I
Gary.
just want to piggyback on what Lenny said, because there's one other variable, which we're gonna get close to 50% reimbursement for the feasibility, whether the project goes forward or not. Just to kind of put that out there for everyone.
Thank you for that. Yes, sir.
Yeah, no, that's what I was just going to mention, because taxpayers have an interest in choice. Being asked to spend $500,000 on a project that, again, the Diagonal Interest project has to go over the hurdle of passing a debt exclusion. So how many debt exclusions can this town take right now? And that's, we have to take the DP.
Yeah.
Yes, we do need a fire station, we do need a new elementary school, but that's the struggle right now.
Yeah, you know, I've been saying to people that I can tell you what, you know, in my professional judgment is good for that organism known as the town of Dayton, you know, in their financial futures. And the voters, you know, their organism is their household, you know, in their pocketbooks, you know, and so they're, you know, there are difficult choices to make, you know. Go ahead.
So one more quick, and not so much about that, just in general in this presentation, because this is just kind of kick off, we might revisit this topic before we vote on it. I just think one thing that might be helpful is maybe there's some work to be done with the assessor's office to show how this impacts different categories of assessed households, because obviously I look at mine, this is right in line with what roughly what my home value is, so I know it's going to cost me $250, but if you're more, it'd be nice for each person in each bracket to know, you know, especially I think what I've seen is like small ones.
They have to buy it for pay.
But they would have to do the math, I'm saying, let's say the math for them, and say, you know, your house is assessed between, you know, 200 and 300, this is roughly what you can expect, 300. But if you expand that a little bit, they would be helpful to really cover the entire tax base, so each category of individuals knows what they're building.
Okay. Yes, sir.
If you do something like that, I think it's better to put the possible highest number, and then if it's lower, people are happy with kind of like a, you know,
Okay.
with the regular.
So I'm thinking here, in general, before I get back to my script, that maybe during the Q&A, you know, we'll take down these suggestions. I was warned, you know, don't do this thing and tell us you're gonna, you know, that you're gonna cut, you know, police and fire, and you're gonna, you know, don't scare us into this thing. And yet, as I've been on my talking tour, I hear with people, they're starting to ask for more specifics. So, you know, there is time. You know, there is time for another session, and maybe we can get into the nitty-gritty on that. But that's the conundrum I find myself in right now. But anyway, so where did we leave off? So the last page of this handout, I never go through. You know, among the related considerations, I think we touched on this before, absorbing costs with no debt exclusion would greatly impact the town's credit rating and ability to plan and borrow for future projects. Paying the full project costs under the existing levy would threaten the town's ability to budget conservatively to limit the burden on Dayton residents and taxpayers, and not excluding debt would put the town on an extremely slippery slope education budgets would significantly crowd out our ability to fund core town government functions. So that's that handout. So let me grab it. The fact sheet is, we talk about many of the same consequences. We say a bottom line no vote. That means we'll have to find the funding from within, that's a given. And we did speak earlier about our revenue growth. Historically, that tells us that it won't catch up fast enough to meet this obligation without, perhaps some combination of actions on the part of the town. And we did say earlier that, we really haven't calculated any increases in health insurance and pensions and other fixed costs into the math here just yet. A yes vote will make fiscal 26 still a challenge, as it is every year. You don't have a widely diverse tax base, even though you have a split tax rate. You don't have a critical mass of commercialism or industrialism in the town to lean on to any significant degree these days. But a yes vote will indeed mean that over and above the tax levy, the property tax bill will indeed be higher in town. There's facts are facts. Now we've got, I did hear, if you turn, you've got a couple of spreadsheets in that same attachment. And while the first slideshow came from the original 2022 presentation, we just updated all the numbers. That was a suggestion of the Board of Selectmen for presentation purposes, and we were happy to do that. The top portion of the spreadsheet just shows on a proportional share basis, in the major categories. The operating budget categories on the left-hand side are part of the uniform, the UMass method of accounting system that Massachusetts has. So, they're codified, but that's why they're bundled the way that they are. And you'll note that the proportional share numbers include primarily, general government departments and no education cuts. That is, so this is the format that we inherited. And I did converse with the former town administrator, and I guess it had been a consensus among some that, or some recognition of the difficulty in containing educational budget requests. And I know you're all far better at this stuff than I am here locally, but I did read the district agreement for the Dayton-Rehoboth School District. And it's not so simple to say, okay, Dayton is going to reduce its contribution to the DR budget. There are 10 seats on the DR board. You have 5 each, but Rehoboth has 5 full votes, and Dayton has 4 full votes. So that's one obstacle to a clean cut. Let's say in education budgets. The Aggie school, I wonder, have you ever parsed the Aggie school budget? When I was a manager in Norton, we thought that was the best bargain in town. I don't know if you have budget battles with the Aggie school at all, but my personal 8.5 years of experience with them, has been has been quite good. And BP is BP, you know. And they got to turn the lights on and the heat on in these new additions at BP too. So, you know, wait until you see what their operating budget assessment is going to be next year. So, but we're not giving up on that, on this effort. The numbers below include proportional share cuts for, you know, for education. So there's, you know, so there's two looks there for you. But again, these are proportional share representations, okay? They say that in Public Administration 101, no, I wouldn't say that it's going to be a smart answer. It's going to be a smart remark by me, but a budget is a community statement of values. Okay, I'll keep it clean. A budget is a community statement of values, and proportional share cuts may sound fair, okay, but life isn't fair. Certain services really truly are more critical than others, and I rather doubt that you'll be looking at your fiscal 26 budget on a straight proportional share basis here. But for representation purposes, you know, that's what you're looking at, and read into it anything that you want, and probably discuss it a whole lot more at the next forum if there is one. Yes?
The $910,000.
Yeah.
Just so I'm clear,
Yeah.
that is for construction of the street. Am I correct? Does that include operation and maintenance costs?
No. No, it does not. That will come in the regular school assessment as a separate line in your annual assessment from there. Yeah.
So there will be a second phase of this too. In other words, there will be more money requested for the operation and maintenance of the school itself.
It's a supposition on my part, but I think it's a pretty good one, isn't it?
No,
Yeah.
just so I can clarify
Yeah.
in my own mind, if you've got two separate asks, one 910 profit,
Yeah.
okay, for construction of the facility, but then there's turning on the lights, as you said.
And that stuff is embedded in the operational portion of the assessment, but and I can't imagine what that would be.
But it's still another assessment.
It's part of the operating budget assessment.
But
So,
it's still something like that.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Just the one thing to know from the Bristol Aggie side of it, with the new building that they had, we haven't seen an increase in the cost per student there because of the new efficiencies, energy, and blackout repairs, and everything is new.
That's a really good point. I've seen that in my own house. So, but you're right, I did not consider that. Yes, sir. Okay. This gentleman's next.
So one thing I mentioned that stands us different when Berkeley, when they were presenting their quote to the top, they could include cuts to their KP because they are fully redesigned. So I don't know, it seems to me there's this misunderstanding that we have the option of saying we're not going to pay the debt to hold the regional assessment. We already gone through that for the last 10 years. So there needs to be some insight that 4 years ago we were getting the state coming
Okay, and then the gentleman to your right.
I just want to make sure that you know Mr. Jackson is on the school board.
Oh, very good. Very good.
Yes, my follow-up, so this is these two spreadsheets are the result of a no edge exclusion, right? This is us finding the
That is correct.
money cost.
That is correct.
And then, I guess maybe this is, maybe you think it's better. What is the likelihood of the bottom scenario of there being allowed us to cut from?
It's really not much, because the way, at a minimum, towns are obligated to give what they gave last year, and this happened when we went into the state takeover 3 or 4 years ago. And even when we did that, you still have to, like your analogy, a level funded budget still resulted in almost $1 million of temporary cuts while we waited for the budget to play out. State ultimately came in, looked at our budget and said, hey, we're hoping you can fund it. And if I was in Rehoboth, I would be loving right now that Dyke's grabbing Buckley and saying, hey, we can't pay. And they're happy to keep voting their assessment. Then we go into the two-town meeting, like if you recall back in 2019. And I would imagine the education, usually parents get involved when we start saying we want to cut schools. So I think we all need to get the understanding that, in order to protect the town services and not pick one side against the other, we got to figure out how to push it, because it's not going to end well with town services.
Right, and I think that's what needs to be communicated is the impact of not doing that, because it's all well and good to see the bottom scenario here, but it doesn't sound like the bottom scenario is a realistic option. So realistically, you're looking at the top scenario, which is, $250,000 in public safety, 110 in general government, 65% attention highways. I just think that's the
So that's those are the meeting materials. And let's kind of morph into, the Q&A, or let's just keep doing what we've been doing. But I repeat, let's try and be to the point and brief. Yeah, you bet. Sure. Thank you. Sir in the blue behind you, did you raise your hand? Did I see your hand up? Okay, thank you. Hi. Why don't I take that one? I won't be handling papers around. Who's first? Why don't we set that? Where do we set this up? Where do we set the stand? Over here? Okay. Okay. Lenny, I think you're challenged like I am. That stand may be too high. Oh, no, you got it. Okay.
We've heard a lot of discussion about all or none. 910,000 or cuts. Has there been any talk about halfway? Looking at cuts and presenting a number that's less than 910 debt exclusion?
I've asked, and nobody's had a straight answer for me whether we have to bond the whole thing or just a portion of it and do the other half with cuts.
Well, actually, we have had those discussions in public. They were initiated by the chairman as well. So I'll go back to Avon again as an example. When I did an interim a stint there, they had a debt exclusion for the construction of a police station. And they ended up not utilizing that authorization at all. Now, Avon is on Route 24, they've got all that commercial property, and they've got a split tax rate, so they were able to do that. You can, if you get your authorization, we're talking about this like a line of credit, okay? You don't have to max out your line of credit
in every given year, in any given year, during the 30-year term here, you can say, you know, we can afford to do only $400,000 or $500,000 or whatever. You don't have to go, and that's all of you folks here that make that decision on an annual basis, or at least bring that option to town meeting by saying that, you know, we can do this with instead of 9/11, you know, 500,000, and we bump up this cost and we make these cuts here. I mean, there are a number of levers here for you to pull, okay? And I've been walking a very fine line here. I follow the policy directives of the board, and the board hasn't taken a public position on this, but I will say, professionally speaking, I was afraid to do this, but I'm just going to tell you all the truth. I think your decision-making process will be a whole lot easier if you take out that line of credit. You don't have to exercise it. And I know I've learned this about the tax climate in Dayton. You know, those responsibilities aren't going to be taken lightly going forward, or select board members and other people are going to find themselves out of office very, very, very quickly. I have, full faith and trust in the Dayton culture to restrain, municipal spending and to keep the tax rate in check. And it's not the be-all, end-all, okay? You voted the debt exclusion, now we don't have to do anything else. No, I'd encourage you to look at, any combination of reasonable cuts, trying to develop other revenue sources, and things like that. I just think, remember, I said, I look at the government as, as an organism. That's what I think. And I wouldn't, I might bring different judgments to the table if it were my tax dollars. That sounds crass, doesn't it? I don't mean to make it sound like, that way, like, I don't care about the taxpayer. Hell yes, I do. I think a debt exclusion gives you far more maneuverability for your operating budget and future capital projects. There, I said it. Sorry, guys. Who hasn't spoken? You, sir. And Nancy, next.
The analogy of the line of credit is very helpful. So, in a perfect world, we voted for debt exclusion, but yet every year someone has to talk about their fire funds. We never exercise it. One of the things is the disadvantage that have taken that debt exclusion vote. Is there any?
A door slammed, sir. Could you repeat your last?
If you never exercise it, obviously that's a problem that happens, but there's just advantage or downside of having taken that debt exclusion vote if you never did in fact exercise.
To my knowledge, none. And in the ratings game, it would probably be a plus because I do know that the rating agencies look at the willingness of there's so many measurements, so many metrics to this thing. But believe it or not, the public's willingness to do that is one of the factors, one of the quantitative factors that go into your bond rating. Nancy.
I think the question that Mr. Hull raised is good, but I think it's muddying the waters here tonight. That is a local decision. First of all, when there is a bond issue. The state doesn't care how the mortgage, that's what I call it, it's a big mortgage, is paid. However, every community involved in that mortgage must vote somehow to pay it. So the most likely way, it's not the least painful, but when you look at the possibility of cutting town services, it's our only option. So what I'm saying is, the debt exclusion needs to pass. So let's assume it's passed. Now, it's budget time. Finance committee's meeting with everybody and we're looking at this. We have already exercised a debt exclusion without borrowing. Now, I believe coming up we will be doing it. But we've made the mortgage payments on the police station up through 24, I believe it was. The debt exclusion is sitting there waiting, but we have not exercised it. But by the same token, the people who wrote that mortgage are guaranteed by the town of Dayton it's going to get paid one way or another. So if we don't have sufficient money to make the mortgage payment, we will be looking at exercising that credit and borrowing money. The main thing is we got the okay to do it from the people. My concern is that we should not be talking about splitting this now. We are obligated to guarantee the payment, and the state says, or the bankers say, you don't vote the exclusion, we're going to get the money anyhow. The fact that this is a regional district, and Dayton Rehoboth is different from Berkeley. Berkeley still has a local school system. They want to cut the school system, they can cut their local without getting involved with regional districts. That is not the case. We are obligated to pay the assessments from Dayton Rehoboth, operating in capital, Bristol Plymouth, operating right now, is going to be capital. And it's the same thing with the Aggie School. Mr. Perry asked if there was going to be additional costs. Even without a mortgage, yes, the school budget is going to go up because costs go up. And those schools assess us according to enrollment. If we have an increase in enrollment at Aggie or BP or wherever, we're going to pay more. If it decreases, there will be a reduction. My main concern again is how we pay the mortgage if and when the time comes should not be part of the vote that's being considered, because we can't guarantee to the people of Dayton there will be sufficient money to make the mortgage payments without borrowing the money. We have been fortunate with the police department, and we can thank our finance committee and our other people in town who manage money. But again, this debt exclusion should be looked at separate and distinct.
Is there anyone who hasn't, Serena, oh, okay. Is there anyone who wishes to ask a question who hasn't had the opportunity just yet? Okay, then you are next, sir.
Thank you. I don't think I need to go to the mic. Do I? Can you hear me? To you, sir, and to the Board of Selectmen. Up until this point in time, I did not realize that debt exclusion could be considered a line of credit. And had two speakers address that point. I think it is critical that we send a synopsis of this discussion we just had regarding the line of credit out to the townspeople so they understand that, as Nancy pointed out so well, we've been able to cobble things together, but in the event we can't come up with money, we can go back to this debt exclusion. I think it's critical to educate people in that regard, because many people, until this very evening, I thought it was all enough. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else?
Can I just add one statement?
Is it about stormwater? Oh, you've thrown me an elbow or two, too.
Thanks to my budget manager who's sitting here tonight, one of the best run and least expensive departments in the town for what it does. My main point is, if we have, 350 million for BP,
305.
305, that's the total, and a roughly 110 million for the Aggie School. We know we're going to get state aid. Fortunately, the Aggie School is just a hair over 51%. I don't understand why BP came in at less than 50%, but that's another story. But the main thing we have to keep in mind, we are obligated to approve the total bond. Even though there's going to be state aid, and we're going to pay, in the case of the Aggie School, maybe 50% of the actual bond, and in the case of BP, 52 or 3%, you still have to approve the total amount because they want it guaranteed the payment will be made.
Nancy, that's BP's job.
No,
BP is doing the bonding. We're not,
that's
we're not.
my point is, if anyone in Dayton thinks we're on the hook and we're only going to approve 8 point something, no, we are going to approve our proportionate share of that total bond issue. We're all in this together. Yes, the total amount is 350 or 305, whatever the magic number is. And Dayton's share will be, as we said, based on the formula with the students and the interest and all that stuff. However, the total amount of money we're talking about still is 305 million. So, of that amount, Dayton will pay its share. Just like at Dayton Rehoboth when we added on, whatever the last time we did something up there. We know what the total was, and in fact, we were approving the total bond issue. And then it filters down to, and by the way, Rehoboth's share is this, and Dayton's share is this amount. So I'm just making it clear, this whole regional district is on the hook for 305.
Going once, going twice. Yes, sir.
Bill White, 455 Forest Street. Is that bond, as we're calling it, more like a loan? Can that be structured in a way, since you said, we'll get revenue in the future, based on future growth projections, could that have a balloon where it's a lower cost in the beginning, and then you can make another payment against it later when those revenues catch up? Or is it just a straight out bond, here's the principal, here's the interest, 30 years or so?
We're not parties to any bonding. BP district is, we have to pay into BP for them to make their bond payments. The short answer is on the structuring of the debt itself, I don't know, sir, but I will, but I will find out. But we're not looking for bonding authorization here. We're discussing how we're going to meet our share of, the proceeds. Our share of the debt service. Okay.
So on the debt service, are we taking a line of credit in case we need it for the town?
No, it was an analogy by. Me. It's not a literal. In a literal sense, it's not a line of credit per se, but it is what it is. A debt exclusion would be, the questions on the ballot seek authorization to tax Dayton properties using the existing tax levy, but with a value added on top of the levy for whatever we're going to pay, whatever we decide we can afford to pay for debt in a given year. So if the tax levy is $5 million and there's an additional charge of $500,000, the total tax will be calculated based on, $5.5 million. But we're not the bonding, we're not the parties to the bonding. Okay?
So Dayton's creditworthiness or Dayton's yes or no vote isn't us taking out a bond. We're just voting if we're going to, we've got to pay a bond anyway, but
Yep.
we're just voting to say, yes, we're willing to pay it,
Yep.
or we're going to make cuts. So
Remember the slides said, with respect to the bond market, remember that on one of the slides, we have capital projects that are being developed now, and it will necessitate borrowing. So when the time comes for that, they,
we'll look good for other projects.
that is correct. That's exactly right.
Yes, vote makes us look better.
It does.
No
It does.
vote makes bonding companies look
Then they worry about, with all the other demands that you have to maintain services, they worry about your ability to pay. And you may have to forego certain of these capital projects, and then you continue to devour your physical.
like the church.
Yeah.
Could I explain what happened as far as the schedule of payments? I was assistant treasurer here at one time.
Rock and roll. Go ahead. What hat haven't you worn around your desk?
Superintendent of streets, and he's
Ah.
my budget man.
You're not bumping him.
He won't let me get on CDL. So,
Good man, Tom.
okay, so again, let's assume the people vote, all the towns, everybody votes for, and they come up with the money. Middleborough, Taunton don't have to vote, but they're going to have the money. The Unibank, I think, do we know if they're handling BP? We don't know.
They do.
Okay. All right, so Unibank, the big bank that's got this huge mortgage to the tune of $305 million, what they will do is set out the schedule of payments. You pay interest twice a year, unless the rules change, and you pay principal once a year. So they will figure that all out for 30 years. It'll all be listed. And what you see is, because I'm thinking of the first time we added on to the school building, which was mid-'80s, as I remember. I think it was Unibank back then, too. But anyhow, once the amount of money was approved by Dayton and Rehoboth, the bond, they figure out the payments. Each town got the schedule. So let's say, I'll randomly pick September and March. So the fiscal year starts July the 1st. In September, the first payment would come due. And if you looked at the schedule, it was probably interest. So the regional treasurer would pay the bill. Paying the bill is because we get the assessment money for capital from the communities, okay? So we got the money here at the district. Write the check, make the first payment. Now March comes, and when you look at the schedule, you're going to see principal and interest. You put the two of them together and you write that on the check. That pays the mortgage payment for that entire year. So on a very large scale, Unibank is going to have, I assume, a listing of 30 years of interest payments and capital and interest payments. And then BP will break it down, because remember, there's that variable of, even if the interest rates stay the same, enrollment affects who pays what. So the district treasurer will issue the invoices to the communities. Now, prior to that, once they get that schedule, We shared it with the 2 member towns and said, okay, for the next 20 years, here's your interest and principal payments. VP is a little different because of enrollment, and it will fluctuate slightly based on enrollment. You can't make additional payments when you have money. It's not like your home mortgage, where if you pay your mortgage every month, but you happen to have $100, you say, gee, I'm going to put that on the principal. You go to the bank or whoever loaned the money to you, you can do that. That isn't how this works, okay? You got to make the payments as scheduled in the amounts that they tell you are due. If you have extra money in your community, you probably should be looking at putting it into, if you truly have extra money, putting it into a savings account, whether it's capital stabilization or even into OPEB, all right? But, so that part of it, when I mentioned it was like a mortgage, you can't do that. And again, there's no balloon payments. Everything comes according to the schedule. So once this bond is set, we should be getting one, quite frankly, we should get a copy of the main one, and then we should get the one with all the breakdowns. Because if I were paying that bill, I would want to see what the total amount is and what every community is paying each year. And our finance committee is going to need that in order to figure out what they're going to have to do. By the same token, that's when we can look at it and say, do we need to actually borrow all that money this year? Or have we got a little bit of money? Again, even with our police station, we're not making balloon payments. We're looking at it and saying, what's due this year? Can we afford to pay it? And we have been fortunate, but again, I think that's going to change, right?
I think, last question.
So one last interesting point, Paul. So let's say the town votes this debt exclusion down, then it comes time that, let's say the elementary school makes it over the hurdles and it gets developed, we go to bond for that. You were saying like, they'll look at us, our rating would be affected on that project, and them saying, hey, they previously voted down the debt exclusion for another capital project.
That's a possibility, but I see a time lag between the present in November 5th and when that comes up. And circumstances may change for the better or for the worst. It'll be whatever the snapshot is at that point in time. But the snapshot you talk about is not now. So. Thank you, everybody. If there are any follow-up questions or anything that was discussed tonight, whether you're for the debt exclusion or against the debt exclusion, I promise you will get straight answers. And if you have any suggestions, topically, I think some people are looking for more detail on the cut side or developing any alternative revenue sources. Things like that. Please let us know. I think this was a good start tonight. It was a great dialogue. Thank you for all this. And we're not even close to the end point, of these discussions. But please do weigh in with your thoughts, whether they're for or against. I'll say it for the last time. We promise you a square answer. Whatever it is, okay? So thank you very much.
Thank you.